Hello and welcome. Today I wanted to show you my travel makeup bag. I was away for about 2 weeks visiting my sister. First I was dog sitting and house sitting for her, and then she and her family came back and I stayed for a little bit of a visit. So I wanted to show you everything that I brought in my makeup bag and just go through it and talk a little bit about how much I used it, if I used it at all, and whether it was the right decision to bring it, if I had any regrets about what I had brought or what I hadn't brought. So if you'd like to see all of that, just keep on watching. The majority of this trip was very casual. As I said, I was just looking after my sister's dog. I brought Xander with me. He's back at his favorite place on the couch now. So for the majority of the trip, I was really just staying home most of the time and just going out for walks. But at the end of the trip, we had a little bit of a family event. So that was the only kind of slightly more formal thing that was going on. But I still wanted to be pretty well equipped with makeup. I was planning on filming a few videos. I actually did film 2 videos while I was away, but I've decided not to post them. I just didn't like the setup that I had. I did pack this makeup bag with the intention of filming a couple of videos. So this is not by any means a minimal makeup bag. You can see it's quite a large bag. This is actually an old Clinique bag that came with a Clinique purchase probably 15 or so years ago. And it's just my favorite travel makeup bag because it's nice and big. It's sturdy. Obviously it's held up for as long as it has. I can fit everything I need to fit into it and not feel like I'm challenged with how much space I have. And I definitely didn't need to bring as much makeup as I did, but I wanted to keep my options open. And it wasn't really an issue. I wasn't flying or anything, so it was fine to bring basically as much as I wanted to bring. So let's get started. The first thing I'm pulling out here is the Huda Glowish skin tint. It's the Multi-Dew skin tint. I have this in the lightest shade, and this I used almost every day. I brought this as kind of a multi-purpose product, as both a glowy base, but also kind of as a tinted moisturizer that gives a little bit of color and coverage. I was going between bringing this and the Auric Glow Lust, but I decided to go with this, and I'm happy that I did. This is a little bit of a deeper shade than the Morganite shade of the Auric Glow Lust, which is great for me in the winter time, but I have been doing fake tan pretty regularly. So it was nice to have this little bit darker shade that just matches my skin tone better at this time of year. And although I find this similar to the Auric Glow Lust, there are differences. So if you think of each product as being 40% pigment and 60% glow, I would say the Glow Lust is 60% glow, 40% pigment, where this is 60% pigment, 40% glow. So it's a little bit less shiny, kind of metallic and glowy than the Auric Glow Lust. And it has a little bit more pigment and coverage to it, which was great because I did wear this kind of on an everyday basis. I would usually just put my sunscreen on and then put a little layer of this on, and that was all I went with for the day. But I was also able to do that process and build makeup on top of it if I wanted to. So even if I wanted to add a whole other foundation or just kind of spot conceal and blend it out, this served as a perfect base for any type of makeup look. It was great to be able to get some use out of this because when I bought it, I think it was in the winter time or in the fall, and it was just a little bit too dark for me then. So I'm really happy to be using it now and really enjoying it throughout the summer. The next base product I brought was the Westman Atelier Vital Skin Foundation Stick. I brought this in Atelier 0, which is the darker of the 2 shades that I have. I also have Atelier N, which is a little bit lighter than I want at this time of year, but Atelier 0 is a really nice shade for me at this time of year. And this was, again, just something that was really easy to use. I could add as little or as much as I wanted to, use it as a full foundation, or do just more targeted coverage and spot concealing with this. The shade was great. It feels very comfortable on the skin. It works well in the summer as well. It's not super emollient for this type of a foundation. I think of this as kind of a balm foundation, but it's still sturdy enough to hold up in the heat and humidity on my skin. So this was a great thing to have. It's also nice for when my skin is irritated. This is kind of what I tend to go to because I just know that it's not going to add any additional irritation. It treats my skin well and I feel good about putting it on my skin, I guess I would say. The next base product that I brought was this tiny little Nars light reflecting foundation. So this was the original sample of this foundation that I got when it was released. It's in the shade Mont Blanc, which is, again, too dark for me in the winter time, but a great shade for me in the summertime, and it was very convenient to have it in this tiny little package. I used this actually the day that I was filming my videos. I wore this. As I said, I'm not going to end up posting those videos, but it was just nice to have this as an option. And it's just so small and compact. It was perfect for traveling with. And the last kind of all over type foundation product that I brought was the Eldridge foundation. I had these little samples, and so I just brought these little blister packs because they were perfect for traveling, and I knew I wouldn't be using this too much. I actually ended up using this foundation on the day that we had that little family event, and I used it on my sister too, and there was plenty in one little blister pack for the both of us, so that was great. I used the shade 5 actually that day. I have shade 1 and shade 4 in the full sizes. Shade 4 is actually what I'm wearing today, but I wanted to try the shade 5, and since I had the sample, it was a great opportunity, and it worked really well for my skin. I would say it's actually the same depth as shade 4. The undertones are a little bit different, but they're very similar tones in my opinion. Shade 5 might be just a little bit more neutral, so it's a little bit kind of a more muted tone than shade 4, which has a peachy undertone. I don't find it overly peachy at all, but it's perhaps a little bit more peachy than shade 5, which is a little bit more neutral. And I love the Eldridge foundation since I started using it in the winter time, but even more so now in the summer because it is a little bit more of that matte finish. But because of that, I find it works even better with my skin. Now that it's a little bit more balanced in these summer months, I'm not as dry. I would say I have kind of a more normal skin type in the summertime. And it's much easier to just keep the moisture in my skin. And because it is a little bit more matte, it just wears really nicely in the heat and humidity and holds up beautifully all day long. So I think that's a great option, especially for a summer foundation. I brought 2 concealers with me. I know this is way more base products than I needed, but I figured if I wanted to bring a lot of anything, it would be base products because that's generally where I want to focus, even if I'm not wearing a lot of makeup. I want my skin to look and feel good, so that's what I'm gonna focus on first. The 2 concealers I brought are actually both Dior concealers. So I brought the Forever Skin Correct concealer and the Backstage concealer. These are both in the shade 0N, but as you can see, the shades are quite different. So the Forever is a lot darker than the Backstage, and the Forever was great. I kind of used it the same way as I used the Westman Atelier. I could just kind of do spot concealing or targeted coverage in certain areas and blend it out. And that shade works really well for me in the summertime. And then I brought the Backstage just for brightening. So I really only use this under my eyes just to brighten those little troughs that I get like under the bags under my eyes. I did use this the day I was filming, and I also used it the day I had that little event. I'm sure I could have done without that one, but it was just nice to have the option. I also brought my little Charlotte Tilbury under eye corrector. This is another thing that was great to just have on an everyday basis, even if I wasn't doing any more makeup, just to use that and brighten up the under eyes and make myself look a little bit more awake was a good option to have. The other thing that was perfect for brightening up under my eyes and my skin, and I use this almost every day, was the Eldridge Pink Moon highlighter. This is an everyday staple now in my routine. I never want to be without this. I like to apply this right after I've done my eye cream before I do any other makeup. I dot this under my eyes, and then I just blend it out all under my eyes and onto my cheeks and kind of around the orbital bone there and up onto my forehead a little bit. And it just gives the most beautiful, glowy, kind of natural, fresh skin look. It really helps to brighten under my eyes and help me to look more awake. And as I said, I never want to be without this because this is just such a magical product for me. I also brought my Chanel green corrector. Sometimes I would kind of mix that in with the Huda Glowish, or if I had any areas that were a little bit more red, I would add this on, but I didn't use that too much. I probably could have gotten away without using that. I think the green correctors are, for me, a little bit more important in the wintertime when my skin is really pale. That's when the redness really shows through. I'm still using them in the summer, but they're just a little bit more impactful in the cooler months. I brought two bronzers, one cream, one powder. I brought my Nars Laguna bronzer. This is the shade Laguna 01. I didn't use it all that much, but I used it on those couple of days where I was doing a more full face of makeup. And I brought the Huda Glowish bronzer. This is again the lightest shade in the range. This is a great powder bronzer because it's quite sheer, so you can apply a very little amount and just have an extremely subtle effect, or you can build it up and have a little bit of a stronger effect. I like that it has that soft radiance to it. It's great on its own or even to set a cream bronzer. So this was a good one to have. Again, I didn't use it all that much, but it was nice to have, and I wore it on the days that I did a full face of makeup. Now for blush, I brought three. One cream, I brought the Mimi blush from Westman Atelier. This I used quite a lot actually. On days when I was just doing like very minimal makeup. This really came in handy because it just gives a very natural flush to the skin. It doesn't look makeup-y at all. And I find this color works especially well for me in the summertime. It can go a little bit warm on me sometimes when my skin is at its palest. It can just pull a little bit kind of warmer orangier than I want it to, but when my skin is just a little bit darker, that is a perfect shade for me. And I brought two powder blushes. One was Aphrodite Amour from Pat McGrath, so this is one of the recent duos. I brought this because it's the kind of color that can really go with any look, so I figured it would be the most versatile, and I did actually use this quite a lot as well. Again, on minimal makeup days, this worked beautifully, as well as on more heavy duty makeup days. I put labels on all of my Pat McGrath powder blushes and highlighters so they're easier for me to tell apart. So that's what that little thing is there. But this was very useful to have. I was really happy to have that. I like that you have the more muted color and the brighter one there, which can be really helpful if you're using a little bit more bronzer, you're doing fake tans. It's nice to have that kind of bright pink just to almost clean up the face, because things can start to get a little bit muddy looking sometimes if you're using a lot of bronzer or tanning product. To have that kind of bright punch of a pink is really helpful. Also brought this Hermes blush. This is the Rose Blush shade. It's a little bit more orangey, and I just thought it would be nice to have on hand. I actually didn't use this at all though while I was away. I am wearing it today in conjunction with a couple of other blushes, but it didn't get any use while I was away. For powder, I brought the Westman Atelier powder, the new one. I have it in the translucent shade, and this was again very useful. I didn't use this every day, but it was great to have, and it just looks really natural and can really bring any kind of look together, whether it be a very minimal look or a more full-on makeup look. And I also brought this Victoria Beckham highlighter. Part of my reasoning for some of my choices for what I brought was that I wanted to bring some newer things as well, just to get a little bit more of a feel for them, get more use out of them, and that was the case with this Victoria Beckham highlighter. And I didn't use it all that much, but again, it was nice to have. This to me is very useful for finishing off a look. So especially if you're using more powder products or you're setting with a powder, it's really nice to just kind of go in with your finger with a little bit of a balm highlighter and just add that kind of moisture and more real skin look to the look. So I did use that a couple of times, and I used it today as well. And again, it just kind of brought everything together and made things look a little bit more fresh. For eyes, I just brought one eyeshadow palette. I brought this Dior palette, the Nude Dress palette. I used this quite a lot, particularly this bottom kind of taupey shade here. This is a great shade for a minimal makeup look. If I was wearing minimal makeup, I usually just wore that and then did a little bit of a liner with the darker shade and no mascara, but I felt comfortable enough in that. It gave me enough definition to just give me a little bit of a pick-me-up, but without going really makeup-y with the look. So that was great. I was really happy to have that, and I didn't feel like I was missing anything by only having that one palette. The only other eyeshadow product I brought was my Lisa Eldridge Liquid Lurex eyeshadow in the shade Diana, this beautiful coppery shade, which is actually what I'm wearing on my eyes today. I did use this once the day we had the family event. I actually just used it as an eyeliner in conjunction with the Nude Dress palette. It was really nice, just a little kind of subtle effect on the eyes. I probably didn't need to bring it, but it was another thing that I kind of just wanted to challenge myself to see if I could use it, because I don't use these types of single liquid eyeshadows or cream eyeshadows all that much, so I just wanted to throw it in there and see if I could make any use out of it. And I like the way I used it as a liner, and kind of inspires me to use the other shades in that way as well. For brows, I just brought 2 shades of my Kosas Air Brow. Really quick and easy to apply these. I brought the shades Medium Chocolate Brown and Honey Blonde, I think. Usually I like to fill in with the darker shade where I have more gaps, and then kind of go all over with the lighter shade just to bring everything together and add a little bit of dimension to my brows. For lips, I brought 2 lip liners, both Lisa Eldridge. I brought the Fawn liner, which I have here, and the Affair liner, which is just a little bit darker than the Fawn liner, but they're along similar lines in terms of the tones, both kind of warmish, nudie tones that are just really easy to wear. And for lipstick, I brought 2 Lisa Eldridge ones again. I brought Spirited Away and Kitten Mischief. Kitten Mischief I used quite a lot. That's a great everyday, any kind of look shade for me. It's my #1 all-time favorite lipstick. And I brought Spirited Away, again, just because it was a little bit of that kind of deeper option. I also brought a couple of lip balms and lip glosses, but they weren't in my makeup bag. I just kind of had them in my purse. And last but not least was mascara. I only wore mascara a couple of times while I was away, but I brought this little mini Boite Upswing mascara, and it worked beautifully when I needed it. So in terms of regrets about what I brought, I don't really have regrets about what I brought because there weren't really any issues with anything, but the things that I could have gotten away without bringing, probably the Dior Backstage Concealer, the little Nars foundation, my green corrector I didn't really need, and I didn't really need the Lisa Eldridge eyeshadow either, but I think everything else was a good thing to have. And in terms of regrets about what I didn't bring, no regrets. Felt really comfortable with everything I had. I didn't feel like I was wanting for anything. So I think I did well with this makeup bag. Definitely overpacked a little bit, but still happy with how everything went. So that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know if you have any questions or comments below. I always love to see those. And if you'd like to see more from me and you haven't subscribed to my channel already, I would love for you to do so. Thanks again so much. Take care, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.